take a moment and just allow your eyes to close. Allow yourself to withdraw the attention, the focus from the world around you to the world inside of you. Just gently unhook that attention from all of the organs of sensation, where usually we pay all of our attention to sights and sounds, smells, sensations. Just unhook that attention and draw it inward. So of course the world is still happening around you, but your focus is inward. Your awareness is inward. Draw that awareness to your breath. Don't try to change the breath, but just allow your awareness to merge gently into it as it flows in and flows out. If you get distracted by a sound or a smell or a sensation, or the rising and falling of the waves in your own mind, don't worry. Just allow the awareness to come back. Just let it gently come back to the breath. Just keep returning that awareness back to the breath so that all else dissolves and it's just an expanding, deepening awareness into the breath. And then slowly through the breath becomes just a portal through which that awareness expands. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at chest level and rub them gently against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly lower the hands and open the eyes. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be back outside again. The beautiful, beautiful garden. You're all dry down there, yeah? Okay, good. Is cutting up fruits and vegetables, himsa, means violence. Is it violent to cut up fruits and vegetables? So there's a lot of levels of energy in the world. On the deepest level, every single form of life is aware. And whether it's a blade of grass, cucumber, whatever it may be, there's awareness. We know that plants absolutely have awareness. Have some kind of a plant version of a nervous system. They've done all kinds of studies where if you yell at plants, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to cut you, that literally they can actually measure the change in some very, very subtle energy on the plant. It's a similar thing that they use, with humans. We have something called galvanic skin response. And it's most of what they use with lie detector tests. When they put something on you to tell if you're lying. Well, when we're nervous, which most of us are when we lie, a lot of things happen in our skin. Not just that our pulse goes up, but it actually changes, the very energy on the skin changes. And so these machines can pick it up. And they've used similar types of mechanisms to actually notice the different way that plants vibrate at what we would consider an imperceptible level, but the machine can perceive it, based on singing to it, based on yelling at it. I mean, and we've known this for a really long time. I remember being in elementary school, maybe junior high, doing a science fair project with plants, where one plant, I yelled at it, and another plant, I talked really sweetly and softly to it and loved it up and sang to it. And a third plant, I didn't do anything, the control group. So I just turned 52. So if you imagine, I was in junior high school 40 years ago. We already had enough research that as a kid, I was so fascinated by it that I was doing a science fair project on it, of how if you speak nicely and softly and lovingly, the plant grows more. It actually grows more. It grows faster, grows lusher, more leaves, more fruit, more flowers. We've seen it in water. There have been incredibly beautiful studies on the crystallization of water based on how you talk to it. What crystals of water look like if you yell at it versus if you chant sacred mantras to it or you tell it, I love you. So on that energetic level, every single thing on earth that is alive is changing based on what we do to it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's violence. It just means that in good conscience, we cannot say that there is no impact. However, the dilemma is most of us can't live on air. If we could, that would be great. If we could all just become, breatharians and live on air or live on sunlight, we could live the most the least harmful lives, the most gentle lives on earth, if we never needed to drink water, to eat any food. Nothing like it. Unfortunately, that's not a path that's available to most of us. And so we end up having to make choices. And we make choices based on amount of violence. Not just to that which we are eating, but to the world. And so if you look simply at levels of what we would consider consciousness, it is much higher in, for example, a cow than in a cucumber. The nervous system of a cow is much, much better developed than it is in a cucumber. The energy you are able to perceive from a plant if you pull its leaves off is tiny, microscopic, compared to that which you are able to perceive while you are slaughtering an animal. It's night and day differences. Or if you're looking at a scale, it's the very top and the very bottom of the scale. So most of us who are committed to yoga, to dharma, to spirituality, we try to just live as low on the harm scale as we possibly can, while simultaneously realizing that the answer is not to harm our own bodies. Because we are also life. We are sentient life. We are conscious life. I've had people ask me, some of you probably know, those watching it online who tune in a lot probably know, I'm a very, very avid, very fervent vegetarian, vegan, other than right here at the ashram where we have very happy cows who are members of the family and we share their milk with their happy babies. And I've had people say things to me like, well, if you were stranded in the middle of a forest and you were going to die of starvation, would you eat a squirrel? And the truth is that I'm not quite sure I could, but I would really hope that I could. Like on a moral level, I don't have a problem with that because I'm able to look and to say not that the squirrel doesn't feel pain. It does. And I would pray that I'd had so many other options before having to do that to survive. But if the choice were my life or the squirrel's life, in clear conscience, I could choose my life not out of some sort of human-centric view that I'm somehow better than a squirrel, but simply from the idea that if I lived, chances are I would be able to help others in a way that a squirrel wouldn't. That there were actually other people's lives who could benefit by me staying alive compared to how many people would benefit if the squirrel stayed alive. And I share this because, given that we have to eat, eating vegetarian, eating vegan, eating local, eating organic is about as low on the spectrum as you can go. I do know people who subscribe to the Jain faith, who, for example, don't eat root vegetables. They don't eat carrots or potatoes or onions because in order to eat them, you pull them out of the ground. And it's believed that you're harming insects in the ground in a way that you're not by eating things that grow above ground, pumpkins, cucumbers, fruits, etc. So everybody has to decide on their own level of conscience, their own path of yoga and dharma and spirituality. How low on the harm scale can I possibly go? And again, as I was saying, it's not just what we eat. It's also where it's from. I mean, are you buying, juicy oranges in Michigan in January that are coming in via trucks from Mexico? Well, there's an impact of that. Just something to be aware of. Doesn't mean thou shalt not eat fruit in winter, but it just means as we're growing in consciousness, as we're committing ourselves to living conscious lives, just to be aware. What's the impact? What's the impact of trucks on the highway carrying tropical fruits into non-tropical areas? What's the impact of eating out of season based on transport? What's the impact of eating non-organic with the chemicals and the pesticides that then seep into our soil and our groundwater and into our rivers? And so all of these are just ways for us to bring more consciousness into our life. I think cutting up fruits and vegetables, I certainly don't think it's more violent than biting into one. I mean, eventually if you're going to eat the apple or the cucumber, either you're going to use your teeth or you're going to use a knife. So I don't necessarily think that one is more violent than the other. And given that even if you didn't pluck it, that cucumber was going to fall off the vine and rot. That apple was going to fall off the tree and rot anyway. So regardless of whether you eat it or not, it doesn't have a very long lifespan. And so we take things that are offered to us by the natural world. We take them with gratitude. We eat as much as we need to survive. We eat to live rather than live to eat. But it's a beautiful question because it enables us, whatever we are eating, to be conscious. I mean, when I was reading these studies about plants, I went through a phase that, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to start doing it again. It was a beautiful phase of my life where literally I would touch everything I was going to eat. Like if this was, let's say, a cucumber, before I cut it or ate it, I found myself just automatically, after having read about the way that you could feel the plants vibrate, I found myself just lovingly sort of touching every piece of lettuce, every vegetable, every fruit, everything before I cut it and ate it. There was just a sense of like, yeah, I know you're alive, and thank you. And I know you're alive, and thank you. And it's a beautiful way of just bringing consciousness into every moment, the interconnection of life and gratitude. So no, I don't think it's violence. But there is an impact. Other questions? Yes. Oh, yes, you're right. Thank you for reminding me. We said we would take her question first today because we ran out of time. But you'll have to repeat it because I don't remember. It's on.
It just slipped off my mind, but then I have one question related to that. We talk about the whole phase of Vaitarni.
We talk about?
The Vaitarni. That after we leave the body,
Yes, okay.
we have to take the journey through Vaitarni.
Yes.
So I had this question, that is there a possibility that our energy becomes so subtle that we get absorbed in that whole flow of Vaitarni and we don't need to cross it at all and we get liberated forever?
Absolutely. So she's speaking about after we leave our bodies, after the soul leaves the body, before we take on another body in this karmic cycle, the path and the passage that the soul and the energetic body go on. She's saying, is it possible that our energy could just be absorbed into it? Well, we speak about moksha as the individual soul, Jivatma, merging back into Paramatma, the divine. And therefore, we don't have to go through any of these pathways and passageways and rebirths or anything like that. That we just get completely reabsorbed. But I'll tell you a story about my guru, Pujya Sadhviji, because a lot of people ask, Indian people ask, people in the Hindu tradition ask a lot, how do I just get moksha and be done with this cycle of birth and rebirth? And so Pujya Sadhviji says, I want to keep coming back in order to help people. I want to keep coming back. Keep coming back to be able to help people. That's the role of the enlightened masters. It's the role of awakened beings, of fully realized beings, free beings, those who have attained moksha. Those who are gurus are those who, even being enlightened, being in that state of moksha, of freedom, take another body after they drop this one. Not because they're forced to, but because they want to in order to help others. And when I think about it, I think, life is really beautiful. It's a beautiful opportunity. It's miserable only when our minds make it miserable. Life itself is exquisite. If you look at the natural world, you look at Mother Ganga, you look at the Himalayas, you look at the stars in the sky, you look at the sunrise, the sunset, you drink a cool glass of water on, a hot day, you drink a hot cup of tea on a cool day, just little things. You listen to classical music, you listen to the chanting of mantras. You think, why would I want to be anywhere other than right here in this moment? That which keeps us stuck and miserable is the mind. And that's why real moksha is moksha from the mind, not the body. In order for the energy to be, as you say, so subtle, it has to no longer be hooked into my ego, my desires, my fears, my grudges, my attachments. And the moment that I unhook from those things, suddenly there's no longer nearly such an interest to leave the body. Because now the body just becomes a beautiful instrument to be able to interact with the world with. And you're able to sit and meditate and experience that divine oneness. And then you're able to stand up from meditation and use that experience of oneness as you move through the world. In love, in connection, in service, in consciousness. So don't worry about it. Just focus on freeing yourself from your mind. And then even in your body, there will be that free experience of moksha. Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
Does the ego serve a purpose in our lives?
Does the ego serve a purpose? Absolutely it does. If you study child development, the development of the ego is critical, actually. There's phases of child development. See, typically when children are born, they live in a state of just oneness. It's not like me and breast. It's just universe. Slowly, 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 we develop a sense of this is me over here, and that's you over there. It typically happens around 2. It's why we speak about the terrible 2s. It's when kids learn I and me and mine and no. Right? That's the age that kids learn no. Do you want to go to sleep? No. Do you want to stay awake? No. It's just no. Look at the power. Look at how mom gets all wet in her face every time I say no. And they're learning how they over here can impact the world. You put a kid in a high chair and they take their peas and they drop them on the floor, right? Why? Because it's really fun to watch you pick them up. Because it's the child's first experience of how they are influencing the world. Look, I throw a pea, mom bends down and picks it up. It's a game. I throw it, you pick it up. I throw it, you pick it up. I am causing something to happen in the world. I have agency, I have autonomy, I have power. Watch, I throw it, and she bends down to pick it up. If we don't develop ego, you end up with children who are not able to be socialized, meaning they don't have a sense of where they end and other people begin. They're hurting people. They're taking things. There isn't a sense of how what I say, what I do impacts people. And that's important. I need to know that my words, for example, can hurt someone. And therefore I need to be aware of what I say because I don't want to hurt someone. I need to be aware that my actions can hurt someone because I don't want to hurt someone. In order to have that awareness, I have to understand that there is on some level a distinction between me and that person. Which is why I don't think it's funny if I stick my leg out and trip somebody and they fall and smash their head into the ground. Because I understand that that person is hurt because of me. And I don't want to hurt somebody. So as we start to develop ego, it actually is really important. We start to understand that sense of self. We start to have self-reference. It's how we develop values and ethics. Otherwise, my entire system of values and ethics would be nothing other than what advertisers said. I'd have no ability to say, oh, that's just an advertisement. I don't actually have to go out and buy that bottle of vodka just because there's a billboard for it and the lady looks happy. I'm able to understand, to self-reference. What are my values? What are my ethics? What are my priorities? What do I believe to be true? If I didn't have a sense of ego, I wouldn't have any way of differentiating what I believe from what everybody around me believes, and therefore I would have no way of acting differently than just a sheep in a pack. So, development of the ego is actually really important on a psychological level. It becomes a great hindrance on a spiritual level. Because on a spiritual level, there is no difference between me and others. Which also works, because if I stick out my leg and the person falls, well, they are me, there is no difference. Their pain is my pain. So deep spirituality would also be a deterrent from harming someone. But as young kids and teenagers and the adolescents, we don't have that spiritual ability. Which means that if we don't develop an ego, we're essentially unable to skillfully, empathically move through the world. So we have to develop it. But then as we move from psychological health and emotional health into the deeper level of spiritual health, then we start to dissolve it. But you've got to be psychologically, emotionally healthy before you can be spiritually healthy. Otherwise, you get this spiritual bypass, which is I'm not going to deal with my emotional, psychological stuff. I'll just sing and dance because it feels good. Not dealing at all with actually all of these issues that I have. And then the moment that I'm no longer singing and dancing, they all come back. And so I end up acting in ways that are harmful, that aren't dharmic, because I've never actually dealt with them. I'm just living in a spiritually high state that's ignoring my psychology. So you've got to actually be psychologically healthy in order to really be spiritually healthy. So unfortunately, there's not a shortcut. You can't just not develop an ego or somehow try to raise a kid with no ego. It is really important. It's how they learn to play nice with others, share in the world. No, I don't get all the cookies. See, there's 10 of us sitting here. 10 cookies, 10 kids, 1 cookie per kid. Not 10 cookies for me. So these things are actually important in living in a community. But then, as soon as psychologically and emotionally possible, we help the child understand, or we ourselves start to understand, oh, all of that which I've just built up isn't actually true. It was helpful. It was useful. But it's not actually true, and now I need to unbuild it. Now I need to start tearing down these walls. So it's a process. But it's a beautiful process. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah. Kahibi.
Namaste, ma'am. I'm from Srinagar, Garhwal. My name is Parth Bhatt. I want to ask you that how can I control my anger? Because I'm just preparing for mixed martial art, UFC, and I am so much anger.
Can you speak? I heard, how can I control my anger?
Yes.
But then after that, what did you say?
How can I control my anger? Because I'm practicing UFC, and whenever I'm in the front of a guy in a ring, I just beat him so hard. So, my anger.
You're practicing what?
MMA.
I'm sorry?
MMA.
Oh, fighting, martial arts.
Yes.
Got it. So, yeah, if you've got anger issues, opportunities that allow you to hit other people are going to become fraught with the dangerous possibility that your anger is going to come out and you are going to beat them too much. Martial arts is supposed to be self-defense, not an outlet for my anger. Anger is not something to be controlled, it's something to be healed. If you try to just control it, all you're doing is stuffing it down. And like a volcano, it's going to burst. So don't think about it like controlling. Controlling is just this. Well, you can't do that forever. Eventually you have to let go. Instead, work with it and heal it. So number one, look at what is it you're so angry at. Are there specific things? Are there deep reasons for your anger? If so, look at them, heal them. Otherwise, anger in most of us, unless we've got deep stuff that's been festering for a long time, anger tends to be due to the world not operating the way I want it to. I have an agenda, I have an expectation, I have a belief, I have a desire, and it doesn't happen. So I'm upset, I'm angry. And this is where the solution really is, to recognize that the problem is not other people. The problem was the expectation. And so to the extent that you can minimize your expectations, the world is not going to anger you nearly as much. The other way to work with it is through practices of meditation and mindfulness and being aware. You start to be able to see emotions brewing at the beginning, just as it starts to arise. So it's not that you're pummeling some guy in the head and then you realize you're angry. But you actually can almost see it coming the way that if you're watching an ocean, you can see a wave come out from way on the horizon. And you can just watch it come in. And as you notice anger arising, then there's lots of tools to use so that it doesn't actually take over. You can use breathing techniques. The breath is a fantastic way to work with it. Wonderful. The breath is a fantastic way. Doing something that shifts your mind, not distracts you, but actually calms it. So listening to mantras or listening to very beautiful classical music, walking in nature, observing beautiful art, just filling yourself with that which is beautiful, that which is sacred, that which is perfect, will help let that anger go back out to sea before it comes in as a wave. But you've got to realize that whether you're in a martial arts class or not, if you're taking your anger out on somebody, those karmic fruits are going to be yours. Simply having on a karate uniform does not absolve you from accruing karmic fruit. So you want to be really careful about what situations you get yourself into until you've really worked with that anger. Martial arts should be a way of protecting ourselves rather than a way of harming others. Beautiful. Good. I'm glad you're working with it. Yes.
I want to know something really. What is soul realization? Is it Atma Sakshatkar and soul realization are the same thing?
Yeah. It's the English and the Sanskrit translations.
I want to just know what are the symptoms that I can feel that I am on the path of soul realization or Atma Sakshatkar.
So how do we know if we're on the right path of soul realization, God realization, self-realization? It's all the same. You know because as you watch yourself in the world, you notice, for example, you get angry a lot less because you're not nearly as attached to the physical body, its desires, its agendas, its attachments. We're no longer nearly so impacted by what's happening in the physical world. You also notice that when you look at other people, you start to see them as soul, them as God. Because as you start to experience the soul of yourself, well, simultaneously that starts to show you the soul of others. As I realize I am not body, but I am soul, spirit, divinity, I realize others are also. So if as you move through the world and you look at people, you still are just seeing black and white and dark, fair, fat, skinny, pretty, ugly, you're not very far along. But if as you walk through the world, you start really seeing soul, spirit, divinity in others, even if it's just for a moment, you're on the path. As you think about yourself, as you self-reference, are you constantly focused just on the body, on your role in society, on appreciation that people are giving you, or respect you're getting, or money you're making? Or are you moving through the world with an awareness of soul? If someone says to you, you are stupid, or you are ugly, or you are this, do you believe it? Or do you have a different self-reference that you're able to go in and realize, I am soul? Are you able to anchor in that? Those are some of the ways to just see in your daily life. You'll notice you fight a lot less. You get upset a lot less. You feel jealous a lot less. You compete a lot less. You're a lot less materialistic. And if you notice those things happening, that's beautiful. It means you're moving on the path. Wonderful. We'll take the rest tomorrow. Just one. The issue is there's 5. There's 5. I'm sorry? Yeah. Okay. We'll take it quickly. Yes. Yeah.
Which moment is good?
Which moment is?
Good to love your mother and father. Which moment is good?
To love you. Which moment is good to love your mother and father?
The every day.
Which moment every day is good to love your mother and father? Every moment. Every moment. There's no mort for loving people. Loving mother and father, loving your children, loving your husband or wife or friends. Every moment. Life is your mort. Life is your auspicious moment. Whenever you think about it, whenever you can remember. Every moment we can live in love is a moment that brings us into truth. If we're living in love, we're living in truth. If we're living in love, we're living in soul consciousness. Because real love is soul to soul. So the more we are deeply loving, the more connected we are to soul. If we're in lust, we're connected to body and mind. If we're in love, we're connected to soul. So use every possible moment you can. No, of course not. You can love people who are not here. He asked, is it compulsory that they have to be physically in front of you in order to love them? Of course not. However long it's been. However long it's been. They're not with you, they've passed away. Because what you love is soul. So, even if they're no longer in their bodies, that love is soul to soul love. So even if there isn't a body anymore, the love always was soul to soul anyway. So you can still love soul to soul. Very deeply, yeah. Good. Yeah, of course. It's why we do puja to our parents, and because it awakens that love within our soul. We're connected to them on a soul level. So however long it's been, lifetimes, no problem. Just keep loving. Yeah. Beautiful. have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, and I look so forward to being together again with